Welcome to Uncontained, episode 187. I'm your host, Aaron Static Render, and on the show today, I meet up with the frontman of the band Waterstrider, Nate Salman. He also plays most of the instruments, if not all the instruments, while recording, but he does have a live band with him to go. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we meet up at Tiny Telephone Studio in San Francisco, California. It's a recording studio in a repurposed warehouse building that has a really cool feel to it, really cool look, kind of a lot of wood interior and like kind of shingling inside, along with a couple really cool studio rooms. And I got to take a brief tour of it before we did the interview. Bands such as Death Cab for Cutie have recorded there, so they've had a few bigger names come through and record. But the reason we met up there is because my guest Nate was recording some guitar work on another artist's track. So we'll talk about that during the show. And I apologize if at the beginning of it it's a little ADD, jumping all over the place. But there was a lot to look at in the studio, and it brought up things, and well, that's the way the conversation unfolded. But I do believe that ADD-ness of the conversation kind of actually led to some interesting conversation points. So, I didn't try to change anything in it. We just rolled with the conversation. So, before we jump into the interview, I do want to say I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving, had way too much to eat, some time spent with family and friends, and had a chance to have a few days off from work, because that's really what's important, the no work and eating too much with family and friends. So, I hope everybody had a great holiday, and the holiday shopping isn't stressing them out too much. If you want to help support the show and give the gift of shirts, coffee mugs, and other merchandise, you can find that all at Uncontained's TeePublic store. All you got to do is go to teepublic.com and search Uncontained, and that will bring you to the Uncontained store. You got some shirts, some coffee mugs. You can even get iPhone covers there if that's what you want. Or if you want to go the more conventional route, please just go to uncontainedpod.com. And there's the Amazon banner at the top of the page. It helps support the show, and you can get your shopping done from your couch. So, those are some options to help relieve your holiday shopping stress. I really do hope you are enjoying the holidays, but now let's jump back to, let's say, the matter at hand, the interview I have coming up. I first heard my guest band's Waterstrider on the radio here at Alt 105.3, the Bay Area's alternative, on a show called Soundcheck, hosted by Aaron Axelson, where it spotlights some independent bands, alternative bands, kind of like what I did when I was in college doing my indie show on KBVU The Edge, but he gets to do it on a much larger scale, and I respect him for that. But I heard that this band was from Oakland, heard the music. My wife was like, you got to get these guys on the show. So reached out, set it up, and this is the track that we actually heard on Soundcheck. So take a listen. This is Way Out, and then we'll talk to Nate and find out how he lives uncontained right here. So enjoy Way Out by Waterstrider.
I could live
let's just keep on rolling right now. We kind of got stuff going. So you are in the band Waterstrider. You are the singer and guitarist of the band, correct?
Yeah, and producer, and I play most of the instruments on the recordings.
Yeah, okay. So are you like kind of like a Trent Reznor type character, as where you record everything and then you get a band to play it live?
Yes and no. I really like collaborating as much as I can.
Okay.
It came out of like a necessity to be able to just record the things that I had in my head as quickly as possible without having to like call people up and be like, come play drums on this, come do. But I always prefer having other people do those things when I can, when they're around.
So do you view yourself as more of a singer or a guitar player, or
that's a good question.
Just overall musician?
Yeah, a musician, I think, is the best way that I look at myself.
Okay, all right.
Because I feel like I do a lot of different things. I'm like a jack of all trades, master of none.
Okay, fair enough.
That's the way I describe myself a lot to people. In terms of my musical abilities. I think I just invented a new word.
Musical? Yeah, they got all sorts of new words being invented nowadays, you know. Yeah. So we'll allow that one. I'll let you TM that one, trademark it right here on Uncontained.
All right, you got it. It's mine now.
Yes. It was spoken to reality right now. Mm-hmm. So how long has Waterstrider been a band?
Since 2009, I should say.
2009. Okay, so you're going just over 10 years now.
Yeah, and it's had a lot of different versions, but yeah.
Okay, all right. I was just going to ask, is it the same lineup? Because that would be impressive for 11 years.
No, I'm the only consistent member at this point, I think.
Okay.
Since the beginning. But Walker Johnson, who plays drums with me live, is probably the other person that's been around the longest. So.
Okay, fair enough. Now, I actually heard about you. We were listening to Soundcheck with Aaron Axelson.
Oh, awesome.
He's like, here's a band from Berkeley. Cool. And check it out. I'm like, okay, a local band. Let's take a listen. I don't remember the name of the track that they played on the show, but then we're like, okay, let's get a hold of them and see if we can. They'll do the show. And now we're here. So
there you go. Hanging out in John Vanderslice's wonderful creation.
Yes, the Tiny Telephone Studios.
This is one of two now. There's one in Oakland as well.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. It's like a repurposed, like industrial, like shed in a way.
I should know more about the story of it. I know that he always tells the story if he's around, but he's not around today. So.
Oh damn! We should have picked a day where he's around, so he could just do a cameo drop in and tell a story.
Yeah,
but
he has a lot of good stories. So.
Yeah,
it would have been good.
Do you know of anybody who's recorded here? Like, any like
a
legendary names or anything like that?
Yeah, Death Cab for Cutie.
Oh, really?
Man, there's a whole bunch. That's the only one that I just saw. There's like I don't know. You can walk around and look at the walls and probably find some records that you've heard of. Deerhoof. I know they recorded a bunch here. Honestly, like a lot of people have come through the studio.
Very cool.
Particularly the San Francisco one. The Oakland one's only like a few years old at this point, like maybe 3 to 4 years old. I could be wrong about that.
It's interesting too. There's a lot of music stuff around, what you'd expect in a studio, but then there's a lot of like nature scenery and pictures.
Yeah, like that almost looks like a like what's the guy's name that was on PBS?
Bob Ross.
Yeah, Bob Ross. That looks like a Bob Ross painting right there.
Yes. Happy little trees.
Some pretty happy little trees. Yeah, and then we've got David Bowie with a gun.
They even have friends. And David Bowie with a gun right next to it. He's getting ready to go hunting or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Everybody hunts with a revolver.
Yeah. Always.
All right. So, the studio's really cool that we're here. So, I'm glad you actually invited me to come out here and check this out.
Yeah, I'm glad I was allowed to. I'm kind of like crashing my friend's recording session, so it's all good.
That's always fun. You know, I'm sure she appreciates it. Yeah. Maybe we'll have to talk to her on the show at some point. Give her a shout out. What's her name? What type of music does she do?
Yeah, Sammy Freeman. She makes like amazing like folk pop, maybe. I don't know how she would describe it.
Pop.
I'm just gonna say she writes pop music, but like, yeah, she's good at a lot of things. So.
All right, very cool,
just
man.
Whatever she does is brilliant.
So let's switch this back to you here real quick.
Okay.
We've had a nice little talking about the atmosphere where we're at, but this is your interview here.
For sure.
So let's roll with it and like talk about, okay, your band's been around for 10, 11 years now. Mm-hmm. Now, how did you come about getting into music? Was it something like you were born with a guitar in your hand, or
No. It's a weird kind of story. I was like in elementary school. I had a music teacher. You know, we'd do like songs. We'd sing like, you know, Putting on the Ritz or whatever.
Okay.
And then before music class every day, there would always be like kids jumping up on the piano and playing a little bit. And I remember at one point just being like, I kind of want to do that. I don't know why, but I really want to do that. I want to play the piano. And I remember going to my mom, and my dad, I guess, too, but I feel like it was mostly my mom, going like, hey, like, I kind of want to know how to play the piano. And like my music teacher is kind of encouraging me because she sees that I'm interested. And so I went off and started taking lessons, and yeah, it was great. We didn't have a piano for a while, so I was just like practicing on a piece of paper that looked like a piano.
It's probably
like a couple.
I'm sure
like
it does some good. It does some good, but
yeah.
It's like not quite the same feel.
No, not quite the same thing. But when you're just like learning what the notes are and like playing, you know, Frere Jacques, I think it's okay.
Yeah, it helps get your fingers moving and off the short bus.
Definitely,
you know?
definitely.
But so the piano was your first instrument that you started playing. Now, how long did it take you to start picking up other instruments?
I started to play guitar when I was 12. That was another thing. Like my mom had a guitar sitting in a closet. That she had bought when she was like probably in her 20s or something, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. It was like an old classical nylon string guitar.
Okay.
And like wouldn't stay in tune because the strings were like 1,000 years old. And so I picked it up and started to fuss around with it, and then bought like a book of like teach yourself how to play rhythm guitar. And so I started doing that. And then at some point I was just like, you know what, I'm not really feeling as inspired by playing classical piano, which is what I was doing, like very classical, like playing Bach and Chopin and stuff like that, which I still love to do sometimes. But at the time, it was just not inspiring me the way that like Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and Radiohead were.
It's understandable. It's understandable.
Yeah.
You know, the classics are good, or classical is good, but it's also good to grow and expand into
Definitely.
Other types of music as well.
Yeah, and like through that experience I got into playing like folk music, and my guitar teacher was like a bluegrass musician, so I was learning lots of like crazy, you know, fiddle tunes. That was really fun. I think it informed a lot of how I play, and then later on I got like really into listening to a lot of like West African guitar players and South African guitar players. And
how'd you come about like them, like the West African and South African guitar players?
It was like through Fela Kuti, and then there was a guy named Thomas Mapfumo, who I believe is from Zimbabwe, I think. And his music is amazing. Yeah, I just kind of like, it was like following the trail of beautiful polyrhythmic breadcrumbs that were like opening up in front of me, and I was like, oh, I just want to absorb all this music and try and understand it, even though I feel like a silly, like, you know, appropriating white boy, but that's okay. But I have so much respect for like all the music that comes out of that part of the world, and then a lot of like South American music too, like Brazilian music.
Right on. Very cool, man. So do you think playing piano and getting that classical background helped you like appreciate or be able to decipher music better? Do you hear parts of music that you don't think you'd hear without that background?
Yeah, I mean, I think every part of my journey is contributing to like my growth, all the good and all the bad. So I think, yeah, you know, everything you do as an artist in whatever field you're in, I think is going to like definitely affect your ability to, you know, grow. I don't know. That wasn't very well put, but I got distracted.
It's all right. I'm sorry.
I
was putting my mic in a stand, and I may have distracted you a little bit.
I'm easily distractible.
It's all right. ADD, it's strong with me too.
It's mostly like I just start to space out, you know? It's like those things where you're like talking to someone, then you're like, like that picture of David Bowie, why is there a chain in it? and then my brain goes on like this tangent of like thinking about something that's totally different from what my mouth is doing.
Yes. I've had conversations in my head as I've had conversations that were completely different and out in open air. And I understand where you're coming from. Hopefully I can keep your attention a little bit here.
You definitely are. I'm just I'm a little bit of an alien, so
it's all right. Aren't we all?
We are, definitely.
It was actually kind of cool. Like, I was just in Thailand with my wife on our honeymoon, and we went to a few temples, and one of the temples, it was one that actually women can't go into.
That's not very nice.
No, like some of the monks thought women were dirty or something like that. That's what, or impure. That's more PC, I guess.
I don't know if any of that is PC. But it's not correct with me.
It wouldn't fly in the United States.
Yeah.
But went in there, speaking of aliens, they had like UFOs like etched in silver and like rocket ships and stuff like that. And then like kind of evolution on the thing.
Interesting.
It was like monkey evolving into man, then Buddha.
Oh, okay.
So it was.
How did the UFOs play into that?
I think it was remodeled.
Okay, I was like,
they're
saying like the ancient monks were just sitting in there going like, we got all of our magic from aliens.
Maybe, but have you ever watched the show Ancient Aliens?
I haven't, but I've heard about it.
It's interesting. I'm not necessarily buying everything they're selling, but there's like maybe aliens came down and created, and man, maybe they're the creator, or maybe aliens like hooked up with monkeys and created man. I don't know.
I think it's a possibility. I'm not writing it off.
That's what they always say on that show, too. They're like, is it possible that aliens came down and mated with monkey to create man? Experts say, yes.
You should be the narrator on that show.
Thank you.
You sold me.
But they have that dramatic pause there, too, right before the yes. They never say no, though. They never say no. But all right, Jesus, this is like a very ADD conversation.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm falling into it too. No, it's not your fault, man. It's not your fault. I'm directing and talking about ancient aliens and temples and Thailand and stuff like that. So as I said, I like to keep it conversational.
I like it.
And if talking about aliens is what makes this conversation happen, let's do it.
I'm on board. I'm on board for all of it.
All right, man. So let's see. Let's jump back into music, though.
Okay.
All right. So
music
you mentioned South African guitar and that being kind of something that stimulated you as far as music went. Who are some of your other influences?
Yes, this band from Iceland called Siaros.
Okay.
Or Sigur Rós.
Whichever way you pronounce it.
Whatever way you pronounce it. That's the American way of pronouncing it.
My Icelandic is a little rusty.
Mine too, but I know that you say Siaros, so I started saying it that way, and I probably sound like a pretentious douche. But
I understand that. Like sometimes, like if you go to like I'll just use a taco truck since that's outside my work where I work. And they start speaking Spanish to you and say, like, gracias. It's like, do I feel pretentious saying de nada back to them? And I feel like, haha, I know a couple words of Spanish since I don't really know Spanish.
Right. That's maybe a little too self-congratulatory, but,
Exactly.
No, I feel
like,
it.
Do I feel like pretentious by saying that?
I think it's just like, yeah.
Or should I feel pretentious?
I think you should just do what you want to do as long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
Okay, so
that's my philosophy.
Just eat the quesadilla and be happy.
And just say thank you or gracias or whatever you want to say back.
Or thank you in another language.
Maybe if that's all you can speak. Or
be like grazia, be like Italian.
Yeah, I wonder if that would be offensive. I don't know. Anyway, so music.
Yes, music. Yes, ADD. Back to music. Your influences.
My influences. Siaros. I love Björk, another Icelandic artist. I like a lot of stuff that's not American.
Okay.
Radiohead is some huge Swedish death metal. Not Swedish death metal per se, though I do appreciate it.
Okay.
But I do like, there's a singer named Anne Brun, who's a Norwegian Swedish singer, I believe. I've been gotten really into like a lot of Scandinavian music actually in the last few years. including like all the Scandinavian like pop stuff.
There's
a Norwegian singer named Aurora that I'm a really big fan of.
Interesting.
But my early influences, it was like Radiohead, Paul Simon, Nick Drake, Joni Mitchell, Fela Kuti were probably like some of the Encierros or some of like the big ones.
Okay, cool. So take that a step further. Like, how do those influences play a role in your music now?
Yeah, I mean, the atmospheric aspect of like a lot of that like Icelandic stuff that I was listening to, Björk and, and Encierros. They have like this atmosphere, this like trippy, ethereal quality that feels very landscape-like. It's like it throws you into another world. That's always something that I'm trying to do with my music.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that I have figured out how to do it, but it's something that I'm constantly keeping in the back of my mind, even as I'm like, you know what, I'm going to like make a way more like electro-y song, or I'm going to make a way more mellow piano-driven song. That atmospheric aspect is always there. And in terms of like Fela Kuti and some of like West African stuff that I've listened to, some of the like Nigeria 70 compilations that I think are amazing. That stuff is like all in the rhythms for me. It's like I just was trying to absorb, that kind of polyrhythm mentality of like creating these really interesting interlocking parts. And I still do that a bit. I think I kind of go back and forth with what I'm into, but that was a big part of my early songwriting, was borrowing from all those polyrhythms and things like that. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So now for Waterstrider, what are you working on now? Like, you were in studio recording something for somebody else today.
Yeah.
But what projects are going on with you right now? Any CDs, shows?
No CDs, unfortunately. I ran out. But I have a record that I released a couple years ago called Nowhere Now, and then I just put out an EP. That was like a full length, and I just put out an EP like a few months ago. Was that a few months ago? It was like almost 6 months ago. Like June, end of June.
Relatively, it's a few months ago.
In my world, it's new. I need to make that. I need to make more things more often. But yeah, that was the last EP I put out. It's called Way Out. It was like 5 songs. I recorded it in London. I actually went over to Sweden and started working on a lot of those songs with the producer over there, and then went over to London and kind of finished the EP there.
So how'd you get set up with a producer in Sweden?
Connections through some of the people that I work with, my team, I guess. I have a publisher who's really amazing. They're called Figure 8 Publishing, Paul Brown. And then I've been working with Brian Burton's record label called 30th Century Records.
Okay.
So they had connections over there, and there's some other artists there on the same publishing company as me, called St. Francis Hotel, and they're also like a production duo, and they're really, really awesome.
Where are they from?
They're from Ireland originally, but they live in London now. Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
And I'm not allowed to tell you their real names.
Sworn to secrecy. I won't ask. I don't want to get you in trouble.
Actually, don't know if that's true. I don't think that is true, but I remember I was going to credit them under their names. They're like, no. St. Francis Hotel. All their pictures, their press photos are like, I'm like, okay, cool.
Okay, well, we don't want the like IRA coming after you or anything like that,
The Irish Cultural Police, the ICP.
Is that something?
The Insane Clown Posse, Irish Cultural Police.
Is that what they are?
Apparently. I just made that up too.
Okay, fair
Musicianal.
enough. Yeah.
It's just musicianal.
I think this is one of the first times I think we've had Insane Clown Posse brought up on their show. So congratulations.
I'm a big fan. What, I don't even know what they call
Are you a juggalo?
A juggalo. That's what they call it. I'm not a juggalo.
No, I didn't pick that vibe up from you.
I have respect for the juggalo-ness. Just kooky people. I appreciate all weirdos.
I may have talked about them once before, talking about one of their song, like Miracle something.
So it's not the first time.
It might not be, because I think I may have brought up, because somebody mentioned magnets. And in their song, they're like, magnets, how do they work? And it's like...
It's the eternal question.
Yeah, it's like, it's science. But yeah, they're like, no, it's a miracle. Miracles are everywhere around you, or something. I think it was supposed to be an inspirational song,
Yeah.
like kind of like that, but it turned out being kind of cheesy. Kind of missed the mark a little bit. It kind of happens when you're wearing clown makeup trying to be inspirational.
Yeah, anyone can be inspirational.
Just
right?
my opinion. I don't want any juggalos coming after me, but that song made me laugh. That's all I'm saying.
Hey, to each their own. That's what I say.
All right.
Whatever makes you happy.
Now it's official, though. If it hadn't been before, ICP has been mentioned in this. Now back to the
#ICP.
Back to London. What was that experience like recording there?
It was incredible. I went there for 2 weeks. I kind of did like a little sort of taster session, if you want to call it that, with them for like a few days. And the three of us just had a really good chemistry in the studio, and we like wrote a song in like a day together. And then we were like, oh, we should definitely do more of this. So I went back and did 2 weeks there, and we recorded a bunch. And yeah, it was wonderful to like be able to, like I took the tube, I guess I was going to say the subway, but the tube every day from my publisher's house, actually. He was letting me crash there. And then, we just recorded for hours and hours at a time. And it was like hanging out with friends, which was the right atmosphere for when you're working on a creative project, I think. I'm always looking for like the right feeling. Like I'm always chasing a feeling,
Yes.
So if you're not getting the right feeling, then you're like fighting with yourself and fighting with the atmosphere. And like I've been in that situation a number of times where I'm like, this is almost right, but I don't feel fully comfortable around this person, or I don't feel fully comfortable in this environment. Like you have to find the people that are really there to support your vision, and that you can like support each other, because it's not a one-way relationship, so
yeah, like I could definitely see how that can affect creativity in a way, because to be creative sometimes, like you either need to be in a really uncomfortable place or a really comfortable place a lot of times. So it's like either be like happy or be like creative out of necessity in a way. I could be wrong for some people, but that's what it kind of seems for me.
No, it's kind of been that way a lot for me in my life, where it's like when you're having a really hard time, it's like suddenly you're really creative, or when you're having a really grounded moment where you're like, wow, I feel embodied, I feel like I know where I'm coming from with this art and why I'm doing it. Then you can create from that place too. Those weird in between places where you're like, I don't know what the point of what anything is, and I find myself constantly riding those waves, but I feel like, knock on wood, but I feel like I've managed to find a way to sort of like ground myself when I need to ground myself, and then to open up my like emotional, release the valve on the emotions when I need to as well, in a very healthy way, I think, as opposed to just being sort of ruled by my emotions, which is what happens to me sometimes.
How so?
Just there's been times when I've let things really get to me. I'm trying to think of like, I don't know, a specific example, but but no, I mean there's been some very trying times, like heartbreak or something like that, where I just would, a lot of my music has come from like that place of like, what is my value if I'm not in a partnership with the person, or how do I exist without love, or kind of going like, what is love, what is it to be alive, like just these like big existential sort of questions, and
trying to play Socrates or something like that. I find myself kind of philosophizing with my own brain, and sometimes
to make
that's
sense
just
of it
like
all.
A vicious loop. You go in circles.
Yeah, but I've tried to like not devalue it. Sometimes I've been like, what do I know? But it's like, well, yeah, I don't really know anything, but do any of us know anything? Like that's kind of the point of art, right? Like to share your experience so that you can feel not alone.
Yeah, in a way that's kind of like the imposter syndrome or whatever. Like you feel like, I don't know, they'll find me out sometime that I'm fake.
Yeah, I was actually just reading Amanda Palmer's book. Do you know Amanda Palmer from the Dresden Dolls? She's a really awesome, like kind of performance artist, musician, does everything, but definitely known mostly for like her just stellar kind of unapologetic approach to art.
Okay.
And she has a book called The Art of Asking, and her whole she's always mentioning like the fraud police, which I thought was a really good concept. Like when you create something and somebody recognizes it and you get some kind of validation, you're almost like, when are the fraud police going to show up and tell me like, no, how did you get away with this? Like, you're not good enough to be doing that. Like, that's just like a constant battle, even when you're, at a level where you're making lots of money or whatever, and you've gotten lots of recognition for how good you are at your thing, But I think it's just, that's not what it's about. It's about constantly challenging yourself. So if you're constantly challenging yourself, you're never really going to be satisfied, and therefore always going to be feeling like the fraud police are going to come around the corner and tell you that.
Okay. I can understand that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that. And
yeah.
that fraud police is like, I don't know if it's just like creative types, but I think a lot of people experience that as well. Maybe not just creatives, but people who are like successful in their line of work. Maybe
absolutely.
Like, I don't know. They'll come bust me sooner or later.
Yeah, there was another quote in the book too. I don't remember. It was credited to someone else, I think, but it was something like like the people that are successful are the people that sort of stop apologizing for what they're trying to do, because they're just like, oh, I guess I'm good at this now, so I'm just going to pretend like I'm good at it. They're just better at pretending. I think that's what the quote was. It was like successful people or professionals are just people that are better at pretending than you are. Something like that.
Interesting.
I like that idea.
Maybe I need to start pretending.
I mean, that's kind of all we're doing, right? Like, everything we do is sort of like when did I become a professional musician? I don't know. I still don't always consider myself that, but then I'm like, but I've managed to do this, and I managed to do this, and I've managed to get paid for things that involve music, and maybe that makes me a professional musician, but I'm just gonna keep pretending for a while, and hopefully that'll work.
Okay.
And the more I try and just pretend, it seems to work out. So yeah,
that's cool. So like, what aspect of are you pretending? Obviously you have the talent to play.
It's debatable, but
so is it more like a attitude? Is it like faking confidence, like the faking confidence till you make it type thing?
Yeah, I think a little bit.
Or is it, even if you aren't quite at the skill level, you want to be telling people you can do stuff that may be just outside your skill level that you can eventually reach?
Yeah, I mean, I think challenging yourself is that, right? Like trying to do something that you haven't really done before.
Yeah.
And therefore you kind of have to pretend till you make it happen, right? And I think part of my enjoyment in making music comes out of the like attempt to recreate something that somebody else was doing, that I'm like, ooh, that's a really cool thing. I'm going to try and like copy that, steal that, right? And I've sort of felt a lot of like guilt and shame about that idea for a long time. Like, oh, like, am I just stealing this idea? And I'm like, well, no, because I'm failing to recreate it and therefore making something else. And I think that failure, if you want to call it failure, but that sort of like, you go down one pathway and find yourself kind of straying and getting distracted and going a different direction, and then going like, oh, actually, like, that tree that I was going to go check out in the woods is actually like, I'm going to go check out this building instead. And look, I built all these like interesting structures along the way and created a whole other little universe over here. And those woods over there are cool, but this weird landscape over here is more interesting to me now. And somehow I got there from going over there or aiming for that.
Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of like Christopher Columbus with National Rediscovery Day, which I call it.
National Rediscovery Day.
Yeah. He thought he was sailing to India and hit the United States. So,
right.
Or whatever land it was called back then.
Yeah. But we're all just bumbling around, and then sometimes it works in our favor, I guess.
Yeah. Before I move into the final question, is there anything that you wish I asked?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm playing some shows around the Bay Area, and in Bend, Oregon, I'm playing a festival at the end of January, which I'm not quite sure if that's been announced, but it will be soon.
Okay. Could be a debut of a concert announcement.
It could be. Yeah. If you're in Oregon, come to Bend for the Dark Night of the Soul Fest, I believe is what it's called.
Dark Night of the Soul Fest.
I think that's what it's called. I don't want to get it wrong. But it's going to be cool. Some other bands playing that are really good.
Is it like a gothic festival or something?
I don't think so. No, I mean the other bands that are playing, I guess, have some darkness to them, but I don't know. I'm okay if it's a goth festival. I've been telling people for a while lately that I was like a closet goth in high school. Like I always wanted to be a goth, but I wasn't.
Okay.
But I hung out with a lot of those people, and I was like, man, I wish I could have the courage to like put on eyeliner and like wear all black, but I'm too afraid, because I was afraid, and I was just like, I know I'm just gonna keep wearing my Billabong sweatshirt and, you know, pretending I'm a surfer even though I'm not at all.
Okay, so surfer by day and the world is misery by night.
Yeah, exactly. That was high school Nate Salman.
All right, man. So a little insight to what it was like growing up as Nate Salman, the closet goth kid.
Closet goth, that's me.
All right, so if it is a goth festival, that'd be interesting. Because looking at you, I didn't quite pick up the goth vibe.
Yeah, I kind of went the opposite direction, I think.
Yeah,
in
maybe,
my adult life.
Maybe just a little bit, but that's all right. That's all right. You can change directions.
Yeah.
So you have shows coming up. Any like new music to keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I'm working on some new music right now. I'm gonna start releasing some singles, I think, in the new year.
Okay.
Hopefully leading up to an LP or an EP. Haven't quite decided yet. I'm deciding to kind of like approach music in a sort of new way, and I'm just gonna try and be more consistent about putting out things more often.
Okay.
Trying to get into making some videos, trying to get into making a little podcast with some friends of mine, just like interviewing a bunch of my local musician friends.
Oh, nice.
Talking about like, I have all these amazing conversations with people about like philosophy and consciousness and, you know, crazy psychedelic journeys and whatever. And I'm like, this could be cool. You know, we'll talk about music, but also like go really deep on like human experience, you know?
Yeah, that could be interesting. You'll have to let me know when it's out.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
When you get it up and running, I'll give your podcast a plug.
Cool.
So
that's one of many projects that I have coming up in the new year. Hopefully I'll get them all figured out and find enough time to do all of them alongside the other things that I'm trying to do.
All right, very cool, man. So now I want to move on to the segment of the show that's kind of geared towards helping people who kind of want to get that foot inside the door of the entertainment industry or take that next step. So my first question of this segment would be, what advice do you have for people who are looking to get their foot in the door or take that next step in the music industry?
Yeah, I always say, like, just do it as soon as you can. Just start doing as much as you possibly can as soon as you can. Like, it's probably not the advice that most parents want to hear, or probably my parents, because I remember I said this to them. They were frustrated with me, but like, you know, I went off to college and I was like, this is great. I studied music. It was a good situation. I don't regret it by any means, but I think if I had a clear vision of like, you know what, I just really want to make music in this particular way, and the best way to do that is just to start doing it like for real, like treat it like it's your job, treat it like it's like the most important thing in your world, because if it is the most important thing in your world, then you'll put a lot of effort and a lot of meaning into it.
Okay, so that kind of goes back to the pretending thing that you were talking
about. A
little
bit, yeah.
Like, not that it's the most important thing in the world for you, but that pretend that it's your job until it actually becomes your job.
Yeah. I'm still, working on that in a little bit, but it goes up and down.
I'm still doing that too, my friend.
Yeah.
I'm pretending this podcasting thing is my job until it is my job.
There you go. That's working well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So, that's some good advice right there. Just kind of act as if that is what you are doing for your job at the moment. And then hopefully, as I said, that will become your real job if you stick with it long enough and keep making that the priority.
Yeah. I think also just, looking for like a bigger reason than to just do it is a good reason, I guess. But why are you wanting to do it? Like, is it, for me, it's like I want to connect with people,
Okay.
Like I'm trying to create something that makes us not feel alone, I guess, because I've spent a lot of time feeling alone a little bit, and realizing that like having art, having other people's creations, it's like a window into the true nature of being another human being. I think more than any other way, like more than any conversation you could have with someone, or more than any physical connection you could have with someone, or anything, is just like if you create something and you can experience the way that they experienced something, like through their emotional, weight of whatever they might have created. I think that's like the most real. It's hard to put into words, but
no,
yeah.
it's I gotcha. So, trying to think of how to summarize that up, but I really can't.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah.
But all right, yeah. So it's that connection though with people that you.
Yeah.
That you want to establish. That's your motivation to keep doing music.
Yeah, I think for a long time I haven't realized that like what I love about music is that feeling of like community, that feeling of sort of transcendental shared experience that you have when you go to a really good concert.
Yeah.
Or even just listening to a record and like being able to be like, wow, this opened up all these feelings in me, and then sharing that with somebody that and that kind of sense of connectedness is just that's the biggest thing for me, I think. So
okay, very cool, man. So now let's take another step into this section here. What is it that you do currently to promote yourself and Waterstrider?
Never enough. It's the thing that I'm working on the most, I'd say. And that goes back to the same idea, I think. Like I'm finally realizing like, oh, I can share myself in sort of a vulnerable way, and that's okay. I don't have to just like pretend like I know what I'm doing, or pretend like, or I do have to pretend in some capacity, I guess. But you also like, you can just be vulnerable and be like, you know what, like sometimes I wake up and I'm not feeling like I'm good at this thing. And I think that sort of level of sharing and witnessing is like super profound. And I think that's what we're looking for. At least that's what I'm looking for in, my connection to people who are using like social media, like other artists. It's like, I want to know that they are human as well.
Okay, so how does that come across in your using social media to promote yourself?
Well, it's something I'm working on.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just trying to be less afraid to share, I think. I'm trying to be more intentional about like creating, videos of just whatever I'm doing at any given moment, asking people to take a photo, and also like using it as a way to share promotion, I think. Like I like the idea of like we're all sharing this sort of promotional weight. Like if I have a show with a bunch of friends of mine, like we're all promoting that show. It's not just me trying to promote myself. It's like, trying to promote just good art and things that I care about. But yeah, I mean, promotion. What am I doing to promote myself? Never enough. I guess that's still my question. That's still my response.
Do you have a strategy or anything like that? Like it sounds like right now with say you have a show and your friends are there other bands promoting it, you're kind of like exposing each other to each other's audiences. By that. Do you have any other strategies that you are trying to do more of? Or like what is it that you're trying to do more of on social media?
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to just make a lot more content, I think, and just be more consistent about making videos, making photos, making just random stuff to put on there that doesn't have to be some big thing that I slaved over.
Okay.
Trying to be more transparent and more vulnerable, honestly. That's just
all right.
That's my thing. Yeah, I mean, I think something that is cool that I've seen people do is, just creating like creating a world around what I'm making is something I'm always thinking about, like not just making the music, which is what I'm focused on, but like also having an idea about what I want the art that goes along with it to look like, what I want the visual atmosphere to be.
Are you talking like for like stage show or
everything?
Like
everything.
Album cover or like digital album cover?
Yeah, digital album cover. Yeah, I want it all to be in the same world, whatever I'm doing, I want it to be, thematically consistent, I think.
Okay.
And including my own, like, however I am, like, at any given time, if I have a certain way that I am carrying myself, then I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, how do I make that connected to the visuals and connected to the actual music that I'm making, and so that like I'm living and embodying my art as much as I can. I think that's super important.
Yeah, definitely. That'll help hopefully eliminate that imposter syndrome,
Yeah,
or the
absolutely.
the what was it that she said? What police was it?
Fraud police.
The fraud police. I was
Fraud
thinking
police.
phony police. That's all that was coming to my mind. But yeah, so that will, if you're living your art, hopefully that will help eliminate that, or at least minimize it some. Now, you shared some pretty cool stuff, like talking about going to London and Sweden to record some projects. Now, what is a highlight that you care to share with the Uncontained audience?
One of the most lucky things that I've ever been able to do was open for the Pixies. We did like 4 shows, opening like a little warm-up tour that they did before they went off to Europe. That was super. I was super fortunate to have that experience. So I'm super thankful about that. Just being able to like kind of witness a band that's been together for like a really long time, and has had a lot of ups and downs in their own ways, but to witness that kind of community that's built around that band was super fascinating, and to witness it from the other side, because I'm so used to being an audience member in those kinds of situations, and I still was, but being able to like talk to them a little bit and being able to feel like, wow, like, they're like, what we're doing as the opening band is like the same thing as what they're doing as the headliner, only they've, built up all this infrastructure and have all these, people that they've been able to hire because their community has expanded so much, their fan base, their friendship, it really is a community. It's like you can't have a successful art project of any kind, I think, unless you build a community around it that is willing to support it and give to it and take from it and all that stuff. Like it's a give and take sort of situation.
Okay, I see that. Now, were you able to like talk with them a lot?
Not as much as I wish. They were definitely more doing their own thing, which is totally fine. But I talked to their drummer for a second. The little conversations I did have with them, it was like, okay, like there's something like I've heard people say, which is like you can't be an asshole in the music industry anymore, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just kind of always been true. There are people who are kind of notorious, but even there, it's like now they're just notorious. And is that really like the kind of, or infamous, I guess. They're infamously famous. And I'm kind of like
Axl Rose or whatever.
Yeah, right. Or I can't remember right now. Van Morrison. Van Morrison is kind of a notorious figure.
Oh, really? I didn't heard that many stories about him, but Axl Rose heard plenty of.
Yeah.
So, since we got a highlight from you, like what would be a hardship that you care to share with the Uncontained audience?
Yeah. A big hardship was, I'm just going to be real.
Do it.
Yeah.
I encourage that.
Yeah. I'm
Don't
like
be
all
a
about
fraud.
it.
I'll call the
Exactly.
police.
Yeah, exactly. No more of this non-vulnerable stuff. I right around that time. Oh, so I got signed to a label, which I mentioned earlier, 30th Century Records. Super great folks, and went through kind of an up and down period with that, where I had a manager at the time and was working with the label to kind of like, get it. They were trying to help us develop and expand and find a bigger audience and all those kinds of things, which of course, as an artist who wants to find success, whatever that might mean, I was very on board with all those things. And there was a lot of things I wish I'd said no to, or that I'd had stronger opinions about, that ended up being like, I just kind of said yes, and I'll do that, and to most things that were suggested to me. And, it resulted in some like friendships that ended and some relationships that ended and some really intense, kind of pain and heartbreak and, like a whole restructuring of the band kind of happened around that too.
Okay.
Yeah, these are very
Like,
real things.
I don't know if I necessarily. I don't need specifics,
No,
but do
please
you have
ask,
any
yeah.
examples of like what were some of the things that you were asked to do that may have been detrimental to relationships with the band and other people?
Yeah, I was asked to sort of downsize the band, which I still think was kind of a good thing to do. It was basically like a business decision because it was like we had a 6-piece band at the time, and it was a lot to navigate. So
Yeah.
we were asked to like downsize to 4 pieces so that we could, get more touring opportunities, which, we did get to open for the Pixies. So it's like with the negative comes the positive, I guess, in some capacity. But it's like, there was my percussion player and my good friend who was singing and playing keyboards with us at the time ended up kind of like, having these really hard conversations about like, well, we're going to be a 4-piece and, the label thinks we should get rid of these people, but not these people. And, it was hard to go through, but it was also just like, it's what happened. So
have those relationships been repaired at all, or
yeah,
is it still kind of
it took some
like
time,
rocky?
but yeah, no, those friendships are repaired, I think. But
Okay.
I think it's more like the way that I handled those situations. I went through a period of time where I was feeling pretty into myself in an unhealthy way.
Okay, getting the LSD, lead singer's disease.
Lead singer's disease. I guess so. Yeah, I got the kind of ego thing going on because I was just getting so much validation, and I had quit my day job and all that kind of stuff, and it was like I'm legit now, and I just let it go to my head, and I didn't make very good music, and it all kind of fell apart. That was the other low light, I guess, was experiencing this time where I just I ended up getting a huge medical bill that I couldn't afford to pay off, and having all these things sort of fall apart, including like my band dynamics, and like the band became very professional, not as much of like this friendship and this deep connection. It was like we were just workers working together, and it lost the like really deep meaning and connection for a while. But I'm really happy to have like rebuilt that with the 2 other people that I'm playing with now. It feels like a much more, grounded, communal, like shared experience, as opposed to like, you're my band and you do this and.
Yes, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like with the band, when you join and everything, you want it to be like kind of like brotherhood or sisterhood or whoever's
familial,
in the band.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's how it was. We had. Yeah, I mean that was another big thing. Was just like losing the family dynamic and just losing like the familial aspect to it all was a bummer. To just kind of go in this more attempt to be professional by like treating it that way, but it's like that's not what art is about. That's not what creativity is about. It's not about like just being a professional. It's like about something much deeper and somehow making that your professional work,
Yeah, in a way, sometimes the professionalism kills the creativity.
Definitely.
So they don't always work together.
Yeah, definitely.
Some people find out how to do it that way.
Yeah, and I was, at the same time, I was trying to make this record that was like, I think me showing off like my abilities, like I'm a pro at this now, so check it out. I can do all this stuff. I'm gonna produce everything myself. I'm gonna play all the instruments and this and that. And it was just kind of like, the songs weren't very good. Some of them are like okay, some of them lived on, but most of them I kind of threw away. And the label was, which I really appreciate. They were very much like, this is not authentic to who you are. Like, of course we could sell this maybe, and it would maybe do commercially okay, and this and that. They're like, but we're not interested in that, which is part of the reason why I'm, still working with them.
Okay, cool. So you're still with the label.
Yeah.
You figured out a way to kind of coexist.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah. We're navigating it. The dynamic has changed for sure, but I'm starting to do more stuff kind of on my own. They've given me the freedom to be like, if you want to put something out on your own, just do it. Do what you want to do. If you're really proud of it and we're not totally feeling it, like, you should go for it because it's your artistic.
That's really cool, actually. You don't hear that too often.
No.
Now, So when somebody does come and see you play, or when somebody hears your music, whether it's through the label or something that you put out on your own, is there something that you want them to feel or take away from the experience? What do you want them to remember?
Man, I mean, so the most magical experiences that I've had going to concerts and playing concerts has always been like this sort of transcendental, like beautiful connectedness feeling. I guess it's hard to describe, but like that transcendental feeling that you get from like a crazy meditation session, or like even like really intense exercise, or like crazy sex, or whatever it might be, like any sort of insane sort of ecstatic experience.
Okay.
Like that is what I'm always aiming for, to kind of like make people feel things as deeply as they possibly can. And the only way that that's possible is if I feel things as deeply as I possibly can. It's like this transition, or this transmission of energy. So
Okay.
that's what I'm hoping that people take away, is this really beautiful kind of sense of connectedness, I think.
All right, yeah, and it made a lot of sense when you said the only way I can get them to feel it is like when I feel it myself. Because like if you think about it, like you listen to some bands maybe do a cover of a song, all right? It doesn't have the same feel as the original does, because in my opinion they aren't relating to that song. They aren't feeling what the person who originally wrote it felt, that made them put those words on paper and then record them. So it might have a different meaning to them that comes across, but sometimes it just feels empty.
Right. And I would say that there's plenty of covers though that I've heard as well, where they interpreted it in maybe their own way, or they took it to a new place that it's like it's magical, you know. They've expanded on that original idea, and they totally got the original idea, but now they're going like, yeah, but this is my interpretation, which I think is just as valid, because I think your experience with, you know, my music or my creation, and this goes for just kind of I'm trying to go for a universal sort of
the
idea,
universal you.
Yeah, the universal you, the universal me. You know, if you have your interpretation and your experience with it, I think that's just as valid as whatever the original intent is behind something, in my opinion. And that's an opinion. But I think like other people should be able to interpret something in whatever way they want. And I really like having that sort of openness with meaning. Like everything that I create, I'm like, oh, cool. Like maybe this person interprets it this way or that way. And I like that it can be vague. And I don't always like to give away like exactly why I wrote something the way that I did.
I was just going to ask you that. I was just going to ask you, if somebody comes up and asks you like, hey, what was this song about? Do you tell them?
I might tell them, you know, loosely. But even I'm not always sure what the meaning is behind a song I wrote. Like, to be honest, it's just like sometimes you write something and you're still deciphering it for years afterwards. Or it changes. Like, I think songs can have life in the way that humans have life, and they're dynamic, and like, you know, I've heard that described by other songwriters and other artists too, where it's like they create something, and then, you know, like I'm sure Paul McCartney, I was gonna say Paul Simon, I love Paul Simon too, but Paul McCartney, like playing Blackbird now, it's a totally different experience than when he first wrote Blackbird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's a different thing now. It's had its own life, and it's affected so many people that he probably gets up there and it's like, oh, I wonder what this is going to do now when I play this, you know, when I weave these spells and cast this magic. Yeah. That's what concerts are like to me in a lot of ways. It's like this wizard that stands on stage, or this like magical person that stands on stage and just like goes like, I'm gonna cast some spells.
Hope you enjoy them.
Yeah. If it's really good, that's what it feels like, in my opinion.
Otherwise, it's like bad spells. It's like, oh man, you need to work on your wand skills.
Yeah. Sometimes it can be that way. More Expelliarmus or whatever. Avada Kedavra. No, that's the one that kills people. We don't want that one.
Or what's the one from Army of Darkness? Have you seen that? Like when with the Necronomicon.
Is that the Ash? The Ash, and the Killer Dead or whatever.
Ash versus the Evil Dead is a show that was made after the movie. Right. There was
Evil Dead. That's what it was.
Evil Dead was the first one. It's like the 1 and 2 were pretty much exactly the same, except for one had a little higher budget. Then after that came out, Army of Darkness.
Okay.
When he had the evil get into his hand and had to lop it off and then got sent back
and
in
that's
time
why he
to
has the
medieval
chainsaw?
times. And then, he worked the chainsaw into a weapon on his hand.
I clearly need to watch more of these movies. I never understood why he had a chainsaw arm, but now I do. So.
Well, I'm glad I could help enlighten you.
Yeah.
It's one of the movies that helped me love horror movies, because I was like, when I was like younger, I was like, these don't always scare me. I was like, I don't get it. But then it has that, it's like intentionally like kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I can see,
they're meant to make
Angela
you laugh
just
as well.
like judging you too. It's great.
Oh yeah. She does that all the time. I don't even notice it half the time. And plus, I'm blind in this eye, so I can't see her do it. So there's a reason she's on that side. But all right, so I actually only have like one more question for you, but I actually have a couple things to do before I get there. One
Absolutely.
bonus question here.
Okay.
Where did you get the name Waterstrider? Why did you name your band that?
It was given to me. It was bestowed upon me by a couple friends, old friends of mine.
Did you walk
at the end of
on
high
water?
School. I wish. No. I think it has more to do with the fact that I'm like kind of this skinny, like kind of floaty person.
Okay.
Definitely the skinniness is a factor. They were like, "Oh, you're like a little sticky stick bug thing." So they called me Waterstrider. That was like, I think, the origin.
Okay.
But then also, yeah, the fact that I think it's just like I'm kind of a space cadet in a lot of ways, and I'm kind of floating along, and I'm an observer maybe too, like floating along the tops of things. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out the meaning behind that name, but I knew it felt right, so I just went for it.
All right, fair enough, man. Now, where can people find you? Like, what's your corner of the internet? Where can people find your music? Where can people find you tapping into your more real emotional side on social media?
Yeah, Instagram. That's probably like where I'm trying to do most of my stuff.
What's your at on Instagram?
Waterstrider. I think it's just Waterstrider on Instagram.
Okay.
And Twitter as well, I believe. Waterstrider Music on Facebook, I believe. Facebook.com/Waterstrider Music. And then waterstridermusic.com. If you want to go there and see my really poorly made website. If anyone wants to help me make a website, I'll pay you. Please. I need to like hire these things out because I'm not good at them.
Yeah.
That's the advice I should have given earlier. Was do not be afraid to ask for help from all the people that are way better at things than you are, and pay them money for it when you can, or just give them something in exchange if they're willing to do that. But
good advice.
Or if they're
there,
willing to give you
it's hard to do everything yourself
something,
too.
yeah. I think it's just like find the people that are better at the things that are better at the things that you want to get better at than you. Does that make sense? I don't know if I phrased that right.
I think so. I think I'm picking up what you're laying down.
Yeah.
So,
if you surround yourself with those people, you'll get better, and then they'll also just do the things that you're not good at. Hopefully, if you can ask them to do it.
Definitely, man. That always helps out. Now, I will put all those links in the show notes so people can easily find you and find your music and updates on what you're doing and stuff like that. So check the show notes for contact information.
Yeah, and Spotify. All the streaming things. I'm all over the streaming things. Just Waterstrider.
All right. So now to the final question here. It's a title question of the show. Nate, I've had a great time talking to you in this cool studio here.
Yeah. Sorry we had to relocate halfway through.
Yeah, we did. If the sound sounds different in the second half of the interview, it's because we got moved from one room to a kitchen. And
it's because we are in a working space. What do you know?
Yes, and
actual
people
studio
wanted
being
to
record
something in a recording studio.
What do you know?
I don't get it. We were recording there first, but they booked it.
Paid money for it. We're just crafting.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
We're just here, but this is a really cool place. Little telephone recording studio.
Tiny telephone.
Tiny telephone.
Yeah,
all right. Tiny telephone recording studio.
Yeah.
And thanks for bringing me in here. I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
and
thanks to Sammy Freeman again for letting us.
What's that?
I said thanks to Sammy Freeman again.
Yes. And we'll have to possibly have her on the show and talk about what you recorded and what she's releasing. So
yeah, she's got some new stuff coming out probably sooner than I do. But
All
Who
right,
knows?
fair enough. I do have that one final question
Yeah,
for you, though,
absolutely.
Nate. It's the title question of the show.
Mhm.
Nate Salman, how do you live uncontained?
I just, try to just connect. I try to connect as much as possible. I think like that idea of connection is everything to me right now. It's not feeling alone, not being afraid, not apologizing for being who you are. That's a big thing in my life, is just figuring out a lot of who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and just not apologizing for being a little weird or a little different or a little a little strange, a little floaty.
Little waterstridy.
Sure.
All right, man. I have one final thing for you to do,
Yeah.
and that is sign off the show.
Got
Will
it.
you do me the honor of signing off the show today?
Absolutely. Thanks. It's been an honor to be here. Hi, I'm Nate Salman, and I live uncontained.
And that does it for another episode of Uncontained. Thank you for listening, and thank you to Nate from Waterstrider for joining me at Tiny Telephone Studios in San Francisco to make this interview happen. And I hope you enjoyed it. You can check out Nate's social media. It will be in the show notes. It's pretty much Waterstrider on everything: Instagram, Facebook, and Bandcamp, stuff like that. So you can check out his music there. Hope everybody has a great holiday season, and I'll talk to you right before Christmas, since we are back doing this once every other week. So we'll have another episode coming out here for you in 2 weeks. So keep it right here on Uncontained, and until next time, as always, live uncontained.